And so we'll go to the first member on our side, and we'll go back and forth throughout the morning. Mr. Courtney of Connecticut, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. And again, to you and Mr. Smucker, congratulations on really what is an historic moment here in terms of amending and enhancing the Fitzgerald Act, which for all intents and purposes has not been touched for 83 years when it passed in 1937. I'm a bit of a Fitzgerald Act geek because Fitzgerald was William Fitzgerald, who represented Eastern Connecticut, my district, back in 1937. He was an amazing person. As we talk about non-traditional paths to employment, he never had a college degree. He actually was a foundry worker and an amazing person, obviously, because his leadership skills sort of stood out, and he rose through the ranks where he worked. He became mayor of Norwich, Connecticut, was elected to Congress. This bill passed when he was a freshman. It was his first term in Congress in 1937 and signed into law by Franklin Roosevelt. After 2 terms, he left to go head up the War Industrial Board, which obviously was probably the biggest mobilization of a workforce in our country's history. And Connecticut, like all our states, did so much to make sure that we had the successful outcome. We're about to celebrate the 75th anniversary this summer. And again, the industrial base was as big a part of that story as almost any other aspect. And the Fitzgerald Act actually helped with that high velocity worker training to make sure that the country could obviously meet the demand that existed there. So again, thank you for your passion and experience that all of you really demonstrated here this morning. And again, earlier we did have a kind of a subject matter hearing where we had witnesses from other countries that came in and testified from Switzerland, Germany, and Australia, which again, this is a global issue actually. And one exchange we had with the gentleman from Australia was talking about, because they have sort of a similar setup with the federal system of national, state, and obviously private sector, economies, that, the key element that Mr. I've got his name here, Bradley testified to, was that it was so important to have a national standard so that you have portability as people move from one part of a country to another. And, Ms. Noteboom, you mentioned the fact that, in your sector, that is obviously something that is important as obviously you're a multi-site company all across the country, that somebody who's trained in California can go to work in New York, and maybe you could just sort of talk about that that was one aspect of the Fitzgerald Act that they got it right in terms of a national standard.
Yes, by registering apprenticeships with the U.S. Department of Labor, we create the best practices and toolkits and curriculums and competency-based programs that can not only be used by IBM, and we are using them, but shared with other employers, such as states, such as small and medium businesses. In the digital economy, there are so many critical needs for IT skills, and the transferability of credits in the educational system, as well as the recognition of standards across states with our government, is critical.
And Mr. Bustillo, you sort of have that similar sort of place in terms of dealing with multiple employers. And again, is that standard, again, something that people need to rely on?
Yes, I think in healthcare, a little bit different context in terms of the healthcare sector, just due to the fact that we have multiple occupations in healthcare, right? There are some of those occupations independent of registered apprenticeship, do not have national standards. So the registered apprenticeship process really brings a structure and framework to that is certainly helpful in doing so. And I think that we've been successful in using that as a mechanism to create those occupational frameworks and to assist with the portability across states, as you talked about.
Dr. Foy, I should point out, Wisconsin actually did have the first, legal apprenticeship program in the country back to 1911. But again, this bill, again, is talking about sort of stabilizing the horizon in terms of authorized funding for the programs. Again, just wonder if you could talk about how that gives employers more confidence in terms of participating in these programs if they know they're going to be around for a while.
Yeah, sure, and thanks for the acknowledgement. It's something Wisconsin's very proud of. I think what's really important is that we understand that as we expand the disciplines and the industries in which apprenticeship is becoming a new delivery model, that's an expensive proposition, developing the curriculum for it, making sure that we have instructors available that have a skill set to do the instruction, and it's more difficult to plan for than a traditional academic program. We know the semester's coming up, we know what the enrollments are going to be. We might have a new employer decide at any time of the year that they would like to hire some apprentices and that they have an opportunity to do so. So having funds available for curriculum development, for instruction, I think, and sort of a backstop to what states should and do provide is really important.
Thank you. The gentleman's time is up. You know, we may be a little more liberal when our witnesses are finishing, since there aren't as many members here today, but please, everyone can try and stay within the 5 minutes, but I just gave a few extra seconds, so thank you very much. Next, we have Mr. Guthrie from Kentucky.
Thank you very much. I know a lot of us talked to, as my friend from Connecticut, Switzerland, we've kind of looked at their model. I believe their whole system is planned for 2/3 of their people to go through apprenticeships. And I remember Ms. Davis and I, the chair, talking, and my first thought was, wow, so there's 2/3 of people they're not encouraging to go to college to begin with. Then you look at, you know, according to the census, 2/3 of Americans don't have bachelor's degrees. I think 30% is the #1 state, and that's Massachusetts. So it's not what are they doing to their citizens, what are they doing for? And so I think the question we have here, so the American people know, is really a bipartisan issue here. Everybody's working together. The question is just what is the federal role and what are the details and how much prescription versus flexibility, because we all want to work together to make this work and make it happen. Because you hear the same stories, you hear it everywhere you go. There's every employer in Kentucky that would hire somebody today, even if they're not advertising, if they found somebody with the right skills. And these people are not starting at $7.25 an hour. They are substantially higher.